Federal government expenditure refers to the total amount of money that the federal government spends on various activities and programs. It encompasses a wide range of areas including social service, defense, infrastructure, and more. There are three main components of federal government expenditure such as mandatory spending, discretionary spending, and interest on debt. Mandatory spending is government spending that is required by law. This includes programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These expenditures are determined by eligibility criteria and entitlement programs. Next, discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is government spending that is not required by law. It includes funding for defense, education, transportation, and other government agencies and programs. The allocation of discretionary spending is determined through the annual budget process. Lastly, interest on debt. Interest on debt refers to the interest payment made by the government on its outstanding debt obligations. This includes interest payments on treasury bonds, notes, and bills. It is a significant component of federal government expenditure and can impact the overall budgetary health. Recent trends in federal government expenditure have been heavily influenced by key events such as the COVID-19 pandemic, infrastructure investment, and defense spending. The pandemic necessitated increase in spending on healthcare, vaccine distribution, economic stimulus, and unemployment benefits to address the crisis, reflecting the government's commitment to public health and economic recovery efforts. Simultaneously, infrastructure investment has emerged as a priority with proposed bills aiming to address aging infrastructure, promote economic growth, and create jobs through funding for transportation, broadband expansion, and clean energy projects. Despite these priorities, defense spending remains a substantial component of federal expenditure driven by geopolitical tensions and security threats. Balancing national security needs with fiscal responsibility is crucial. Overall, federal government expenditure reflects the government's commitment to maintaining the country's infrastructure, security, health, and overall welfare, financed through various sources including taxes, borrowing, and other revenues.
Now, I am going to talk about the components of federal government expenditure. The federal government expenditure consists of two components, which are operating expenditure and development expenditure. The operating expenditure is expenditure experienced by the government to pay the cost of managing and administering the country. Meanwhile, the development expenditure is the expenditure incurred by the government for national development. As you can see, here are some examples of operating expenditure. The first one is emoluments, which is the money or other form of payment which a person receives for doing work. Next, debt services. It is the money required to cover the payment of interest and principal on a loan or other debt by the government for a particular time period. And the third one is supplies and services, which is the payment for repairs and maintenance, professional services, and other material supplies. After that, subsidies and social assistance. It is benefit given by the government to an individual, business, or institutions. It is usually in the form of cash payment or targeted tax cut. And the last example is asset acquisition, funds that uses by the government to acquire, upgrade, and maintain physical assets. Now, we will talk about components of development expenditure. Development expenditure can be divided into four sectors. The first sector is economic sector. It is mainly for enhancing public transportation and communication network infrastructure, developing public utilities, escalating trade and industrial activities, as well as boosting agriculture. The second sector is social sector. It has three subsectors, which include education and training, health, as well as housing. And the third sector is security sector, which are projects and programs aimed at strengthening the nation's defense and internal security. For example, upgrading of military security equipment. And the last sector is general administration. It is the expenditure to maintain government daily operation. For instance, in the year of 2022, federal government mainly uses this expenditure to improve public sector delivery and productivity, with a focus on empowering digitalization in the public sector.
In 2020 and 2020, the Malaysian federal government focused on public health and economic support to counter the effects of COVID-19. In 2022, significant funds were allocated to healthcare for vaccines, medical supplies, facilities, alongside economic support programs like direct cash assistance, wages subsidies, and SME support. The National Recovery Plan (NRP) emphasized phased reopening and vaccination, facilitating economic recovery. The total expenditure for 2022 was revised to RM 320.6 billion with 219 billion for operating expenditure and 62 billion for development expenditure, addressing social services, economic activities, and COVID-19 crisis management. Now I'm going to explain about what happened in 2023. In 2020, the focus remained on economic recovery with major investment in public transportations, communication networks, utilities, education, and healthcare. The COVID-19 fund continued to support wages, subsidies, job retention programs, and financial assistance, ensuring economic stability. Key infrastructure projects like the Pan-Borneo Highway and electrified double track were prioritized to boost economic activities and connectivity. Both years show strategic fund allocation towards public health and economic support, with fiscal measures recalibrated for efficient spending and development expenditure aimed at long-term growth. Investment in public health, economic support and infrastructure projects mitigated the pandemic's effect and set the stage for sustainable growth, demonstrating a balanced approach to immediate and long-term needs. That's all from me. Thank you.
Federal government expenditure from 2014 until 2024 in future. For development expenditure data, they are increased every year, but in this video, we will mainly talk about comparison for 2022 and 2023.
In 2022, 222.6 billion has been allocated for operating expenditures. The greatest portion of operating expenditure in 2022 was emoluments for public servants, which is increased to 87.7 billion. The amount charged for retirement has been raised to 31.3 billion. This is a result of the yearly pension increase in addition to an increase in beneficiaries and pensioners of almost 628,300. In 2022, a total of 31.3 billion will be set aside for debt servicing charges. The remaining amount is allocated to offshore loans, with 98.2% going towards payment on domestic debt. For supplies and service, which represent 11.9% of operating expenditure, increased by 39.2%. The increase is due to increased expenditures on professional service and medical supply allocation. A total of 40 billion will be granted to statutory bodies as grants, mostly to cover their operating costs, which include emoluments, supplies, and service. The federal government's total expenditure for 2023 has been revised upward to 397.1 billion. The largest component of operating expenditure is emoluments, accounting for 30.4%. Due to the special yearly increment and monetary support for government officials distributed in January, April, and August of 2023, outlays for social assistance and subsidies are predicted to drop by 4.6% as a result of decreased fuel subsidies brought on by stable global crude oil price. Higher borrowing costs to support development expenditures and the COVID-19 fund have raised debt service charge. Payments for service include school cleaning and security, maintenance and repair, material supply, utilities and telecommunication, which make up the majority of the goods and service at 71.5%. 5.1% of operating expenditures has been set aside for grants to federal statutory bodies, mainly to cover supplies and service and emolument.
Development expenditure data. Detailed statistics on development project fund in 2022 and 2023. Analysis of major project initiated of or complete during the period. Comparison of investment focus areas between 2 years and expected long-term benefit. Next, development expenditure data. Detailed statistics on fund development project in 2022 and 2023. Development expenditure in 2022 is as much as RM 71574 million, including projects such as the transport, environment, and social, which is healthy facility across the nation. In 2023, expenditure increased to RM 9700 million, including energy and public utilities, trade, industry, and agriculture.
In conclusion, this outlines the federal government's increased expenditure in Malaysia, primarily driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. Focusing on economic stimulus package and assistance measures, the government implemented a targeted approach to support household, businesses, and the public health system. Emphasis was placed on enhancing spending efficiency and reducing leakage. It provides insight into the 2021 expenditure performance and the 2022 budget outlook, showcasing the government's dedication to pandemic recovery, economic growth, and fiscal transparency. The analysis extends to the federal government's 2024 expenditure, advocating for a shift from broad-based to targeted subsidies to optimize resource allocation. The benefits of subsidy rationalization are highlighted alongside the importance of reforms benefiting poor households and strengthening social safety nets, education, and healthcare. Throughout, the government's commitment to maintaining fiscal discipline, fostering economic growth, and ensuring equitable income distribution remain paramount.